rocking to the ancient rhythm, rocking to the ancient rhythm. Love is my religion, love is my addiction, African tradition. Free
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
prison.
My name is Alexander Maya Odilon Ngu. I'm the founder of Utopia. I'm also the founder of the Ngu School. And today, I wanted to actually just hop on here and address a misconception that I think is one of the biggest misconceptions in the world. This goes really deep because I'm gonna really go into analysis of how we as humans exchange value, right? So all we know is the fact that from the time that we came into the world, money existed, paper money existed, coin existed, or our forefathers traded with trade by barter, they exchange goods, right? So what I'm going to try to do today is I'm going to try to really go really deep into the difference between money, which is all we know of, money, capital, as in we live in a capitalist society, and then I'm going to go a little bit more into value. Value is completely and a lot more encompassing than money or capital. And I'm going to go into the similarities of those two and the differences. And I'm going to show you why the fact that we have focused on capital and not focused on value and how that has affected our society. But before I go into detail, I'd like to first say that I have two books coming out, and this is also by where I get all this information from, guys. So I've done research for years and years and years, and I've been working on two books. The first book is called the Ngu Theory, the Ngu Theory, which is a mathematical theory, which is essentially aimed at unifying all the energy and all the systems in the universe. So I came up with an algorithm or with an equation or whatever you want to call it that can essentially model all systems regardless of dimensionality. And I'm going to be showcasing that in my book. And then I also have another book coming out called Ngu Utopia. And the whole goal of Ngu Utopia is to show how we can maximize each human's individual potential, thus creating a utopia. Because only through maximizing individual potential can we create a utopia, because external comparisons are never going to be the totality of anyone's reality. So I have those two books coming out. Be looking forward to seeing them. And that's where a lot of this information that I'm going to present to you today is going to come from. It's going to come from my two books. So going back to money, guys. So what exactly is money? Like, we live in a capitalist society, right? Everyone says that this is the most advanced economic political system that's been set up since the beginning of time, they say, right? Now, let's test if that's really true, right? So capitalism, where we utilize money to exchange value, is the system that we're going to be talking about, right? So it's an exchange of value. So if I want to buy something from you, I come and give you money. And let's say you're an artist, or let's say you're an architect, or you're a carpenter, or whatever, and you make something with your physical energy, right? And someone comes and pays money for it. They're essentially exchanging this physical money for your value, for the amount of, and your value can be calculated as the amount of time you put into making that whatever that object was, or furniture or whatever, plus the amount of resources you use to make this material, to make this chair or whatever. And so the calculation for that value is really arbitrary, guys. So it's not really set in stone, right? Which is why the capitalist market, like if you look at the stock market, it's so volatile and it's so unpredictable. So guys, now so we're talking about exchange of value. Now let's elaborate more into exchange of value. like in the scientific sense, right? What exactly is exchange of value? Exchange of value, exchange of money is just an exchange of energy, right? Let me give you an example. So I was recently watching the UFC fight. I think it was 253 or 54 with Adesanya and Costa. And I was watching Adesanya interview, I have to pronounce his name correctly. And he said that fighting is like he's dancing essentially, right? He gets his inspiration or he gets his skills because he used to be a dancer, and dancing is essentially just an exchange of energy. Like if you're dancing with someone, you're exchanging energy, right? Fighting is just an exchange of energy, right? When animals mate to procreate, that's an exchange of energy. Now let's go into the scientific realm, right? When the gravity of this planet holds on to the moon as it revolves around the sun, that's an exchange of energy. Electrons are an exchange of energy. Electrons and other electrons, particles, humans together are exchange energy all the time. So guys, so now that we understand the fundamentals under what value exchange is just an exchange of energy, right? So it's completely arbitrary. It's not set in stone. It's not defined by anyone. It's completely arbitrary, right? So that's what value is. Now let's go back to what capital is, because we live in a capitalist society, a capitalist system, right? Capitalism is an exchange of capital for value, right? So you remember, capital has to be created by a human. Capital has to be created and then artificially defined by a human. A system had to print the money out and then tell you that the money was worth something for you to start utilizing that to exchange value, right? Now that we understand that, hold that thought. Boom. So now that we know that money is just capital, right? And capital is just an exchange of capital can be used to exchange value between people, right? I can do something for you, then you pay me, or vice versa, right? And value exchange is just an exchange of energy, like we said with Adesanya, the UFC fighter, where when he fights or dances, he's exchanging energy with his partner, or when an electron and another electron are bounded together and are spinning around and exchange energy, or as planets, as Earth and the Moon, or as the Sun and planet Earth exchange energy as they have their own dance, right? It's essentially a dance in a certain pattern and sequence, right? So now we understand that energy is essentially going to be at the fundamental root of this exchange of value, this exchange of capital, this exchange of money, right? So now, guys, let's go and speak a little bit about some old scientists, right? Because obviously with 2020 now, we're going to go a little bit in the past, right? So let's go to Newton. So Newton's third law, Newton's third law defined that the energy exchange between particles, at least in the subatomic scale, at least in the macroscopic scale, with the apple fall on his head, that energy, that for every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction, right? So Newton defined that there's this boundness between all particles, right? So that's where that comes from. Now, Isaac Newton, while later, came and really revolutionized a lot of things by defining that with this exchange going on between particles, the energy is equal to the mass of one of those particles times the speed of light squared. That's where Einstein got the E equal mc squared theory from, right? And the beautiful thing about this theory, everyone, is that this theory has helped us define the material universe. We utilize Einstein's theory to essentially define mass, because that's what he says: energy, which is what we know is arbitrary, is equal to mass times the speed of light squared. So now we can define mass, whether it's a planetary mass, or with a human mass, or with the apple falling on the head of Isaac Newton. It's still the same mass. So now we've revolutionized a lot of things. So now we understand how to deal with energy in the physical realm. Einstein, let me give the shout outs to the scientists, Einsteins, the Schrodingers, the Maxwells, the Feynmans. These guys all contributed to what we have today with our understanding of the material universe, right? So now, what do we know about the universe in totality? What we know that is that the reason why Einstein actually never solved the hardest problem was because he was never able to unite this material universe that we understand, because he knows that with our five senses we can understand this material universe, but there's also an immaterial universe. The immaterial universe, we can use an example of shining light through a prism, and it shows you an entire array of colors of the spectrum of light. Something that's hidden is now visible. That's how the material world works, right? So now the problem, guys, is that Einstein's theory of E equal mc squared, or energy equal to the mass and the speed of light square, only sort of works in the material realm. So once we go into the immaterial realm, things start to break down. Once we go really deep into energy, into really high density energy, like around black holes, they call them singularities in the mathematical world, Einstein's equations begin to break down, right? And the problem with that is because we have or had a limited understanding of the immaterial universe. So now, guys, here's where my theory comes in. My theory is called the Ngu Theory, the Ngu Theory. And the whole point of the Ngu Theory is to unify. It's to unify the field. It's to unify all fields. To unify the material field and unify the immaterial field. So Einstein had studied the material field. All these great scientists, the shoulders of greatness, contributed to us understanding the universe like we do today. But until now, I think 2020 might change it, is we had limited understanding of the immaterial realm. And because of that, our systems in the material realm are inefficient, essentially, because they're built on false assumptions or incomplete assumptions. And those are assumptions of only material. Understand? So I'm going to go to one of the little images I made for my theory to show you just a image I made here to show you guys how the universe is exists. So to the right of the zero is the material universe as it expands, and to the left of it is the immaterial universe as it goes negative infinity, and it gets denser and denser and denser, which is why it's just very small and dark, right? And all together we have both material and immaterial, creating the universal consciousness of the universe, right? And this is the fundamental understanding of the universe that we have to understand, and we have to build all systems based on this understanding, right? So now we understand that the universe is made of material and immaterial. Now, what do we understand about immaterial, right? So actually, no, you know what? What do we understand about material? Let's start there. We know that in the material realm, we understand the material realm because it's real. That's where real numbers exist. The material realm begins with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the material realm, right? Now, here is the material realm. If you guys can see that, it's the numbers going all the way to infinity, right? And the other way, as long as they're real whole numbers, right? That's the material realm, right? Now, what do we define as the immaterial realm? Because what we failed to understand was that within that zero was also an infinite universe. That's what we fail to understand. That within that zero, we have an infinite universe. We have an infinite micro-dimensional universe. And I'm going to elaborate in 1 second, right? So zeros are written wrongly, because every zero should have an infinity symbol inside of it, because the infinity symbol essentially is signifying that within the zero is an infinite micro-dimensionality of energy. And let me elaborate on what that means if some of you are lost. So in the material realm, energy is macro-dimensional, as in it's expanding and it's growing in constraints and it's getting colder. So if you can imagine an inception point, this inception point began very hot, right? Boom, like a bomb. And then as the edges get colder, the core was the hottest and it's getting colder. That's the macro dimensionality of the universe. That's why things are crystallizing into material, right? But in the immaterial realm, we have micro dimensionality of energy. What does that mean? It means that the energy is actually, instead of expanding, is being compounded. The energy, essentially, imagine this. Imagine energy, the same amount of energy is being put into something that's smaller and smaller and smaller. So let's say you take a cup, you take a bottle, right? You fill it with liquid or whatever or gas, and then you take that same amount of energy, you pour it into something that is half the size of that, right? You force it in, builds the pressure, and then next thing you do, you cut that in half again, and then you force the same energy into something that's half the size of that, and do that for infinity. That's the micro-dimensionality of energy. The macro-dimensionality of energy is the growth of constraints that creates the material universe. That's why humans are different from each other. Even though our ancient fathers were the same person, but we're different because we're growing in dimensionality. We're getting colder. We're moving farther and farther away from the source, from the zero. But within the zero, we've ignored the micro-dimensionality within the zero, an infinite universe of possibilities. Now, what do we define, or how do we define this immaterial universe? This immaterial universe is micro-dimensional, and this means that it's indeterministic. It means that in the immaterial world, it's hard to predict the positions of particles. It's hard to predict the positions of any particle it's mostly guesses, statistical guesses of where it might be at a certain point, right? But going to the material realm, like look at the movements of planets, we can actually predict exactly where a planet's going to be. The macro dimensional material universe is predictable. It's certain. The immaterial universe with micro dimensionality of energy, where energy is being stuffed into smaller and smaller packages, that's indeterministic, thus it's unpredictable. Thus uncertainty is very high. It's very high, right? Now, what does that mean? That means that in the micro-dimensional world, things are open-ended. Things are guesses. A particle can be in the same place and another place at the same time. That's what it means. It means that the micro-dimensional universe is way more expansive and way less constrained than the material universe. The material universe is extremely constrained. You guys see what I'm saying? Now, guys, this is something that we have to really understand to the fundamental level to then test to see if systems in this material realm are efficient or could be more efficient, right? So now that we understand how our universe is built and set up, now I'm going to go into more detail as to how the system of capitalism or the system of money exchange is only partial when it comes to the ability for humans to express their potential, right? The capital money is constrained to the material realm because it has to be created by material and defined, right? But it's an immaterial realm of value. Every human being has infinite value. That is what that means. The infinity inside the zero. So to the right of the zero, this, to the right of the zero, we grow 1, 2, 3, and we go up. That's the world we live in. The world we live in stopped at zero. But what we forget to realize, and this is why we're so stuck in material, we're so constrained. When we realize that there's an entire immaterial realm, then when we model our human systems or earthly systems after the actual fingerprint of the universe, the actual source code of the universe, the actual source code of the universe, the source code of the universe that defines consciousness. It unifies material and immaterial. It unifies deterministic and indeterministic. It unifies certainty and uncertainty. It unifies the microdimensional and the macrodimensional. This is the fundamental thing and one of the most important things you guys are ever going to learn. Every system can be tested for efficiency. And if that system doesn't have a unification with this source code of the universe, that system is inefficient and is not designed for humanity's benefit. Thus, I'm going to now go back to my original statement about the idea of the exchange of value. The reason why we've not been able to create a perfect system on Earth to allow humans to exist in harmony and exchange value is because we're stuck in a constrained capitalist, or whatever you want to call it, system that is artificially defined in the material realm by a human. You are educated and sort of trained to believe in the system, so the system works. The universal system of energy exchange does not require an external force. It exists because every human has infinite potential. Every human on this planet has infinite potential. And guys, this is what I'm focused on at Ngu Utopia. My job at Ngu Utopia, that's the reason why I started that company, was to make sure that I help everyone that I possibly can to be able to unlock this infinite energy that is within them. Do not let yourself be constrained in the material realm. Do not let yourself value yourself based on what a predetermined value was or a predetermined algorithm was, and the algorithm of capitalism, where you exchange capital, you exchange money defined by someone else. The human is a system. And this system, if it connects to the universe with a perfect source code, can have 100% efficiency. But based on the systems that we build in our society, our educational system, our political systems, our governmental systems, our healthcare systems, they are not built to be 100% efficient. We are straying away from the truth, and we need to go back. Thank you guys very much.